Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about SA620 in audit, and the title of SA620 is using the work of an auditor's expert. So let's start. So what is the summary of SA620? So these are the things which we are going to learn in SA620. First is what are the objectives of an auditor and who is actually an auditor's expert, and what are the sources we have to obtain information about expert, and in few cases, in few matters the auditor and expert need to agree between them. So what are those matters, and when we need to take the help of an auditor expert, and what are the factors an auditor should consider before giving the work to an expert, and after completion of work by the expert, how auditor should evaluate the adequacy of the work, and finally, in audit report, whether auditor can give the reference of expert's work or. So the first thing is objectives of an auditor. So what are the objectives of an auditor is, first he has to understand whether he is going to use the work of an auditor expert or not. First he has to evaluate that. Once he decided yes, he is using the work of the auditor's expert, then he has to uh, think that whether that expert work is adequate for his purpose or not. So these two are the objectives of the auditor. First, whether he has to use the work of an auditor expert or not. If he is using, whether that work is adequate or not, he has to understand that. So next, who is an auditor's expert? So auditor expert can be an individual or can be an organization, and they have the knowledge in any other field other than accounting and auditing. So other than accounting and auditing, they have knowledge in any other field, and by using their work, auditor is collecting the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence for his audit purposes. And the auditor expert may be auditor's internal expert or auditor external expert. So auditor internal expert is a person who is a partner or staff of either auditor's firm or either auditor's network firm. So he this is a summary of an auditor's expert. So what are the things the auditor has to evaluate about expert? So once we conclude that this person is the auditor expert, and what are the things auditor has to see in him? See, first thing is the competence. Competence means the level of knowledge that expert possesses, what kind of knowledge he has. And second thing is capability. Just because he has knowledge, that doesn't mean he's the right person. So we have to check whether he has the ability in exercising his competence in his knowledge. And the third thing is objectivity. So whether he is biased or he can be influenced by others in his judgment, we have to evaluate that. These are the three things the auditor should evaluate in the expert. So, to evaluate the competence, capabilities, and objectivity, what are the sources that auditor has? So, first thing is either he can discuss with the expert directly, or if an expert published books or papers, then he can read those things. Or if he is an internal expert, then using auditors from quality control policies and procedures, we can get to know. Or if that auditor is worked with that expert previously, then using his personal experience with the auditor expert, he can use it as a source. And by discussing with other auditors who have worked with the auditor's expert, we can get to know about him. And finally, using his license, membership, or industry, we can get to know about expert qualifications. These are the major sources we have to get to know about experts competence, capabilities, and objectivities. So with this, we'll completed the introduction of expert. So next thing is that what are the matters that auditor and expert should agree. So the matters both should agree is, first thing is roles and responsibilities. Like what are the roles of an auditor and what are the roles of the expert, they have to be very clear before that only, before the work only. And second thing is what is the nature and scope and objective of the expert work, like how much work the expert has to do. Like if auditor gives the work, whether that expert has to do the 100% of work, or the expert has to do little work and the remaining the auditor will do. This they have to agree between each other. And confidentiality requirements, like if auditor is giving a client data and it is confidential, then there should be some agreement between auditor and expert. And finally, the communication, like what kind of communication they should have between each other, like is there any report is providing, or it's like oral communication. This kind of matter they should agree before giving the work to expert. And in certain cases, there should be a detailed and written agreement is needed between auditor and expert. See, previously we seen it's like a general matters where they should agree with each other, but in certain cases it is advisable to have a written agreement. And what are the factors that suggest to these matters are: first, auditor has not used the work of an expert previously, so this is the first time he is using the work. So there should be a written agreement between them. And the roles and responsibilities, what they actually decided are different from the normal expectations. S- the like they expected some kind of roles and responsibilities, but in reality they had different roles and responsibilities. And expert has access to very sensitive or very confidential information. In these cases, there should be a written agreement for security purpose. And if law or regulatory requirement are there, then they have to maintain a written agreement. And if experts work is highly complex, then also there should be a written agreement. And the work is very significant in audit, then also there should be a written agreement. So these are the matters that auditor and expert should agree with each other. So first we seen the objectives of the auditor. Second, we seen that who is an auditor expert. And third, we seen that matters auditor expert and should agree between each other. And now the fourth one we are seeing is taking the help of an auditor expert. So what are the situations where we take the help of an auditor expert? So first is in case of valuation. In case of valuation for complex financial instruments, land and buildings, plant and machinery, jewelry, intangible assets, business combinations, impairment of assets, environmental liabilities, site cleanup costs. These are all the things where we take the help of the auditor's expert in these valuations. Or in the second thing is the actuarial calculations. In actuarial calculations for insurance contracts and employee benefit plans, we take the help of an expert. And in case of oil and gas companies, for estimation of oil and gas reserves, we take the help of the expert. And in case of contracts, laws and regulations, for their interpretation also, we can take any kind of lawyer or any kind of expert advice. And in case of unusual tax compliance issues, we can take help of a tax expert for their analysis. So these are the situations where we can take the help of an auditor's expert. Now we know the which area we can take the help. So before giving the work to expert, what are the factors that auditor should consider? Like what are the general factors, what are the important factors he has to consider? So first thing is the general factors auditor should consider before taking the help of expert. So before he is giving the work, what are the general factors he should consider is, so he will be giving some matters to that expert to do work. And that matters, what is the nature of that matter and what is the rmm involved in that matter, these two things he has to understand. Like whether it is high rmm or low rmm, he has to check it. And related to expert work, he has to check what is the significance of that work in the audit. And what is the previous experience with that expert. The auditor should think that what is his previous knowledge or previous experience with the expert. And the last thing is whether he is an internal expert or not. Like if he is an internal expert, then he is subject to the auditor from quality control policies and procedures. So these are the general factors what auditor should consider before taking the help of an expert. And next thing is some situations where the auditor has to think in a more extensive procedures, not like some general factors, because these are very serious situations. So the first thing is the expert work is related to some significant matter. So first thing is significant matter. And in that significant matter, it there involves a subjective and complex judgment. So this is the important thing. Like there is a significant matter and it involves subjective and complex judgments. In this case, the auditor should perform the more extensive procedures. And second thing is auditor doesn't have any knowledge about the competence or capability or objectivity. So in this case also, the auditor has to do more extensive procedure. And the third thing is whatever the work performed by the expert is very integral to audit, it means very important to the audit. In this case also, the auditor should be very careful. And the third thing is that expert is an external expert, not an internal expert. So in the previous case we see that that expert is an internal expert, now we are seeing he's an external expert. So it is a very serious situation, like there is a high chance of risk involved in this case. Next, we are going to discuss about working papers and evaluation of expert work. So until now, we got to know about objectives of auditor and who is an auditor expert and what are the matters they agree between each other, and what are the matters that auditor need to take the help of an expert. And before giving work, what are the factors auditor should consider. Now he gave the work to auditor expert and he completed the work. And now the working papers. So first thing is, who is the owner of the working paper? So in case of working papers, if that expert is a member of an engagement team, like he is a part of the audit team, then yes, his working papers is a part of audit documentation. Yes. And second thing is that expert is an external expert. He is not a part of audit team. In these cases, the working papers are his own property. It's not like the part of a documentation. So they do not form the part of documentation. So if he is a part of engagement team member, then yes. If he is not a part of engagement team member, then no. So working papers are decided. Then we have to evaluate the work he did, like whether it is adequate for us or we have to do even more. So first thing is how we evaluate that expert's work. First thing is we have to check the expert findings and conclusions. Like expert will find something and he will come to some conclusions. Na? Whether those conclusions or those findings are consistent with other audit evidence, and those conclusions and findings, what is the relevance and what is the reasonableness in the audit, we have to see it. That is the first thing. And the second thing is, what are the significant assumptions and methods that expert used in his work. We also have to check the relevance and reasonableness for it. And the third thing is the source data which is used by the expert in his work. We have to check the relevance, completeness and accuracy. So these are the three things an auditor has to evaluate for the adequacy of the expert work. First thing is the findings, second thing is the assumptions, third thing is the source data he is used. And there are some specific procedures to evaluate the adequacy of the work. So it includes, first is inquiry with the expert, directly with the expert, and discussions. So the discussion with any other expert who is having the similar knowledge, so that we can understand how to evaluate the expert work. And the third thing is discussion with the management regarding the expert report. The expert gave some report and we are discussing with the management directly. And fourth one is observing directly the expert work. Well, when he is doing, we can directly observe his work. And fifth one is that reviewing the expert working papers. The working papers which he provided, we can review it directly, or we can confirm from third parties, or we can do some analytical procedures regarding the work, or we can reperform calculations if there are any calculations in the work. And what if we find that expert work is not adequate, then what we have to do? First thing is we have to ask the expert that to perform further work. So these are the first thing we ask. First we ask the expert to do further work, and once he agreed, we have to tell the what is the nature and extent of that work, like how much extent he has to work on it. We have to have a pre-understanding between both of them. And if there is no other option and we can't do any further work, then we have to perform other audit procedures to collect sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. These are the only things auditor has in his hands. And finally, work is done, everything was done. Now we are giving the auditor's report. Then what we have to do? So first thing is, if it is like we are giving an unmodified opinion, then we shall not refer the work of expert in auditor report. So like if you are giving an unmodified opinion, you cannot refer the work of an auditor expert. Like I took the help from this kind of this person, so I am referring his work here. No, you can't give that. But if it is a modified opinion, then yes, you can give the reference about the expert in auditor report. But there is a important factor. You have to take the permission from the expert. Without taking permission from expert, you cannot give his reference on it. And one more thing is, just because you are giving reference about expert in the auditor's report, that doesn't reduce the auditor's responsibility for that opinion. So with this, SS620 was completed. So thank you. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.